Ko te waka huia he kai kawe kōrero, he kai hāpai mā tauranga, he kaitiaki taonga. Mau ana ko te tapu o ngā taonga tuku iho, ko tā te waka huia he hono i te hā o tua whakarere ki ngā pātaka mā tauranga o te wā. E putai he kōrero ki te whai ao, ki te ao mārama. A tēnā, kia whai tātou i te māramatanga i roto i ēnei taonga.
Tēnā koutou tamariki mā, nau mai ki tēnei hōtaka o Raranga Matihiko. Ko Sam Hinari tōku ingoa, ko Jesse Robertson tēnei, and we both work at Te Papa Tongarewa here in Te Whanganui Atara.
And together with our friends at Waitangi Treaty Grounds, Te Peto Whenua, Waikato Museum, Te Wharetaonga o Waikato, and MTG to Hawke's Bay, Tai Ahuriri, we've got some awesome activities for you to do at your kāinga all about kaitiakitanga. So Sam, what does it mean to be a kaitiaki?
Well, to be a kaitiaki means that we have a responsibility to look after and to care for things which are precious. So our job as kaitiaki who work in a museum is to look after the taonga which are kept here. Another part of our job though, as kaitiaki who work in a museum, is to help to support you to look after taonga as well. So Jesse, what are taonga?
Well, taonga are things that are special, precious and important to us. Things like our words and our stories, special places, unique environments, even the people around us. They're all things that are special to us and that we want to care for. So, I'm excited. What are we going to be doing?
Well, in this series, we're going to be using digital tools to help explore the relationship which we can have with taonga in the present and in the future. Nō reira, he aha te take mo te rānei.
Well, today's kaupapa is the Moana. And to explore this, we're going to head to Tangata Ole Moana, here at Te Papa, where our friend Hayley is looking at how the ancestors of our Pacific people migrated to New Zealand. Then we're going to come back to the lab where Martin is having a go at creating his own waka. Sound good?
Ka pai.
Awesome, let's head over to Hayley.
Kia ora tamariki mā. Nau mai, haere mai ki Te Papa. Ko Mai Tai tōku ingoa. My name is Mai Tai, but some people call me Hayley. I bet some of you have got more than one name too. Did you know that Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, the Pacific Ocean, is the largest ocean in the world and is what separates Aotearoa New Zealand from the rest of the world? Most people have had to cross this ocean to come here, or their tipuna, ancestors, have made the journey here. The first people to travel to Aotearoa were expert navigators. He tohunga whakatere waka, and they were not here by chance. They were master waka builders, and the Moana was their superhighway. These navigators work with the Moana, and we can learn lots from them about how they use natural, renewable resources and energy to travel, trade, and harvest from the sea. They were very clever people. Their methods were tried and tested, and learning was ongoing. So it's important for you to learn from people who know. I come from the east coast of Aotearoa, and we often talk about the Moana as our kāpata kai, our food cupboard. So it's important that we do our part to look after our kāpata kai by making sure that the things we do on land don't end up in the Moana. You wouldn't want your food cupboard making you sick, would you? It's a big job, and it needs all 5 million of us to do our part. When you see rubbish on the land, it needs to be taken care of, or else it will end up in the ocean. We can't talk about the Moana and not talk about tangaroa. Tangaroa is the Māori atua of the Moana. One of our traditions in my whānau is that whenever you catch a fish, you always return the first one you catch back into the water to thank tangaroa for all that you may take home to your table. I still remember my dad teaching me when I was a little girl about how we must always remember to give thanks. Really, it's just good manners, right? Now, when European explorers first travelled to the Pacific, they were blown away by how fast and easy to manoeuvre Pacific waka were. What we have here is a model of what one of those waka look like, which is based on a design from Tahiti. This one is what we call double-hulled, or waka houroa. That means that this waka looks like two little waka, double waka, strapped together with a platform between the two. This instantly makes the whole vessel stable on the water and means you can travel long distances. You don't want to be falling out of your waka anytime soon. This particular design also has two sails, which were woven from plant fibre. So, because there was more space, there was more room to store supplies and you could take your whole whānau with you, these waka could carry up to 100 people. Sometimes the trips were only one way and they would take everything with them, all that was precious or taonga to them, including anything that would keep them safe, not knowing if they would turn back. But if you made it to somewhere awesome like Aotearoa, New Zealand, wouldn't you stay too? Waka like these were made from natural materials without any nails to hold them together. So what I'm holding here in my hands is senet rope. It's made from coconut fibre and was used to repair and keep everything working while they were out on the Moana. I guess that makes sense because there were no hardware stores back in those days. If you needed something, you'd have to make it yourself. The navigators on board these waka had a very complex understanding of the world around them, which had been handed down to them through stories from their tipuna, their ancestors. They knew how to navigate by looking at the stars, the clouds, the birds, the fish, and even the colour of and how the water felt. I'm talking about the currents. If it was cold, this meant something. If it was warm, it meant something else. They even noticed how strong and which way the winds were blowing. But what impresses me the most, though, is how they were able to navigate during the day and during the night as well. I reckon the stars must have been the original Google Maps. In Aotearoa, Māori are very proud of their seafaring ancestral history, but it was almost lost forever at one point in time. Thank goodness. So heke nuku mai ngā iwi Busby, or koro hek to most, of the Te Rarawa people, was inspired to change this. Hawaiian navigators and waka builders helped them rediscover star navigation and waka design. He even opened up a school to teach wayfinding using the elements of te taiao, of nature. So heke nuku started with the revival of double hau waka in Aotearoa, New Zealand, waka houroa, up in the north, where Sam and Kerry are from. He became known across the world as a kaitiaki of the knowledge of this craft. His legacy lives on today. To me, he was one of the best kaitiaki of all, and we can all learn from his example. So next time you're in Wellington, come in and visit us here at Te Papa, and you can see up close this amazing model. We even have an animation projected onto it as well. I think it's time for you to head back to our makerspace and have a go at making a waka or a waka yourselves. Say kia ora to Martin for me. I hope I get to see what you create. Have fun now. Haere rā.
Great, kia ora mai tai. Wow, wasn't that really interesting to learn how Pacific voyagers used the stars as a way to know where they were going, to go from island to island and then they could get back again, but that's how they ended up travelling to Aotearoa?
Yeah, and they actually built tools specifically for that use. So for example, I've seen a coconut shell that had water in it and different holes drilled into it so they could line it up with the stars and follow the horizon.
So they used a coconut and the stars, almost like a GPS.
Yeah, they were really innovative. So I'm going to head over to the lab now because Martin is using Tinkercad to create his own waka houroa. I'll see you there.
Oh, kia ora, Jessie.
Hey Martin, what have you been doing?
Well, I'm here on this computer because I'm going to use Tinkercad because I saw that amazing waka houroa that Mai Tai showed us. And I thought we'd go through a process of figuring out the design decisions that were made from our tupuna to get to Aotearoa. And all those amazing innovations that they had around using the wind with their sails, around how they join things together. That Tahitian design was really amazing. I was really inspired. So the first thing I did was actually make it out of Lego. And then from there, I'm actually going to try and use that Lego to help support me in Tinkercad.
Sounds good. I'm excited.
Now, we know they travelled Moana nui a kiwa, the ocean, so we knew that they used sails, and that one that we did look at had those two sails. Now, I've made this little Lego model that's going to help me to do Tinkercad, and you can see I've made these two hulls separately, and then I've just made a little bridging piece across the top. And part of what you're doing with your designs is to think about the past and those innovations, but think about the possibilities today, which is really cool. So I'm just going to write down the two hulls again. So two hulls, and they need to be lashed together. It's really amazing to see that senet rope.
Yeah.
So lashed together. Two sails, because this is our Tahitian design. We might try and copy that. So 2 sails. Yep. All right, and we're thinking about our kai. So we've got food. So that means catching as well as storing. So I'll put catching and storing. And as we're working on Tinkercad, we're sort of taking those ideas and suggesting what they are. So I'm going to go to my computer now, and I've just opened up on Google. I'm going to write in Tinkercad, okay? Now Tinkercad is a free digital program that allows you to make 3D designs. You're kind of like using Lego blocks, but digital ones.
Cool.
And there's a lot more features than just using blocks, okay? So I'm going to write in Tinkercad, and the CAD is usually in capitals, like that. And it should be the first one that pops up. Now CAD, in the name Tinkercad, means Computer Assisted Design.
Right.
Okay, and these are the type of programs that you see architects, engineers using. So when you get started on this program really early, this could set you up for a really good career path. All right, so when you open up Tinkercad, you need to log in. I've got my login already there, and we're under the Hinatore Learning Lab. Now I'm going to make a new design, so create new design. What you open up to is a work plane. Let's just pretend that's the ocean. And for me to change my view, I'm just going to use my right click. So that helps me. And then if I zoom in, I can get a little bit closer.
And that's with scroll wheel?
Yep, so you've got the scroll wheel, right click, and left click when I want to make decisions. Okay. Down the side, you'll see these shapes that we can use to drag onto the work plane, and they're our building blocks.
Right.
But we don't have to use them as they are. You'll see that when I drag one on, you'll get all these options. Okay? These little squares that you see on screen, they are used to help manipulate the shape. So you don't have to build with Lego. You don't have to use just cubes to build your object. You can use these little squares to help change the shape.
Nice.
So the white ones help me freely move it around like that, and the black squares help me move it just in one direction. Okay. So if you get the basic shape of what you want, you can start shaping that object. Okay. So the first thing is I'm just going to quickly drag a nice big log like that. Okay, because that's pretty close to what I have there, but we do see some shape in there. So all I'm going to do is teach you how to join shapes together to make one shape. We call that grouping. Okay. Now you have the option of turning any solid color into lots of different colors like that. And what you'll see as I move around is that it is that yellow color. Perfect. Now I want to make sure I get that shape to come up a bit, just like we see in the Lego and we saw in the model that Mai Tai showed us. So what I might do is grab a wedge shape, because that's very close to what we had outside, except was a bit bigger. So all I need to do, just grab the top square. It helps me to make the shape taller. Okay. So if I lift it up like that, it's a bit taller. Now what you'll see is the shape that we have for the back of our boat, which is great. And I want to also put that at the front, but maybe a little bit smaller. Okay. Now to do that, I'm going to actually grab the same shape and duplicate it, make another one, and put it at the front.
Cool.
All right, so if we see this blue shape up in my toolbar, I can duplicate and repeat. And when I click on that button, I make an exact copy of it, and it sits even in the same place.
Okay.
So it may not look like anything happens. There we go. But what has happened is we've got a second object. I can use my arrow keys if you really want to nudge something around using those little squares. So if I slowly push it to the side, you can see I've actually got two.
And so it's only duplicated the shape that you had selected because it didn't duplicate the yellow one.
Exactly.
Right.
So if I wanted to do both at the same time, I would have to either click and then hold shift to select something else. So I have both of them, or I make what's called a bounding box. So if I click to the side of the object, you'll see a red box come up. That's called a bounding box.
Okay.
And everything within the bounding box is selected.
Perfect.
All right. Now I'm just going to drag this shape that way. I only want to swivel it on its base. Okay. So all I want to do, and if you want to be really accurate, you can hold shift. That helps me move it around like that. Now if I just use my arrow keys, I can push it in a bit, and I'll make it a little bit smaller. Like that.
Perfect.
Okay. Now, if you have trouble lining things up, okay, so I'm going to just nudge that forward. If you have trouble lining things up, you can select everything and use our alignment tool. Okay, it's a really good option if you're struggling to line things up and keep them all in the same center, and you use one of these little circles to align them. There you go. Now what I am going to do is turn that shape into one shape. And the way we do that is that bounding box we talked about, like that, and we are going to group. Now what happens is we no longer have three shapes, we have one shape.
Right.
Okay. Now when I manipulate the shape, I'm doing all three at all, that one shape at a time.
So this is a way that you can make a new shape if you can't find the shape that you need on the right side.
Yep.
Cool.
And all I'm going to do is use another rectangle, which is a cube that I stretch out. And I have to do something special to it before I group them together. Right now I have two solid shapes. I'm going to turn the red one into a hole. So if I click this button here, it's labeled as hole, H-O-L-E. And what that means is I can see that it's kind of got invisible, and I want to tell the computer that when I join it together, I want that to be the hole. Okay?
So that becomes negative space.
Negative space. Perfect.
Right.
So all I need to do is I need the hole to only be on the inside. So I need to make sure that shape is a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to do that. So we've covered a lot of the decisions you can do with your object. You can rotate them and change the shape. There is another option here of this, what we call a witch's hat. Okay, looks like an upside down cone. That helps you lift up objects. Because if you were using Lego, you want to stack things up and get them off the ground.
So it's like a conical pyramid.
Conical pyramid, there you go. So I lift it up a little bit like that, and I can use that option we had before where we align things. I can align them like that. And what you'll see is it doesn't look like it's got a hole in it yet. I have to group them together, and I'm telling the computer to take that information and join it together.
Right.
So I want a hole that's made from that shape with the solid shape. So let's see what happens. So I'll select them both and I'll group. There we go. So that's looking a bit better. We've got some extra room for our boat, which is perfect. Now it seems like we've got a long way to go to get to a full waka houroa. So it seems that way, but when we're making pieces that we're going to use, it starts getting faster and faster. Okay, so if I select this one and duplicate like we did before, instantly I now have two holes.
That's good, because having to go through all that again, it could end up taking a long time.
So once you've got something really good, so if you invest all that time in something of a really cool shape, you can just duplicate it straight away.
Perfect.
Okay. Now with these two waka, we want to make sure they join together, otherwise they'll float apart from each other. Grab the shape and squash it right down so it's like a platform. It's not big enough to cover my waka houroa, but I do have those options of stretching it out. Okay. And as I move it to the middle, that's nothing like the design I have here or the one that we looked at. So I do have to use that witch's hat again and lift it up. Okay. Now I quite like the size of that red shape, so I might, instead of making it smaller, actually just move my waka further apart. More room to put my nice little whare or house in the middle. Perfect. Look at that. It's looking really good.
That looks good.
It's probably not going to go too fast though, is it? That was one of the key characteristics, that it went fast. So what we might do is we'll go onto the sail. So we have our sail here, and we'll try to put those on first. And then we might put our house in the middle and put some solar panels on top.
Cool.
All right. So because we have two, we're going to do the same effect that we did with the hulls. We're going to make one sail, and then we're just going to duplicate it up.
Cool.
All right. So I've got a nice pole here instead of a cube for a change. We haven't started with the cube, which is great. And I'm just going to reduce it down. Now, if you use shift while you're moving something, it helps keep it proportional. So it shrinks together. Okay. Now, stretch them up. Perfect. And I want two of them, but I also need a sail. So for a sail, what I might use is, quite funny, is like a rounded roof, it's called, which might be really good for the inside bit, which is great. But if I squash that down a bit, I can start getting a nice sail shape.
I see where you're going with this.
Now, lying on the ground, it's not going to catch much wind. So I'm going to rotate around and lift it up like that. And I need to make sure I get it to be on the pole. And just by using the witch's hat,
Hoist
there we
the
go.
sail.
Hoist the sail up. Now, same thing again. Oh, hold on a sec. I'm going to go backwards. Made a mistake. But I'm going to grab both of them. If you want to keep them as different colors, it's best not to group them together.
Okay.
So if it's grouped as one shape, it means it can only be one color. Okay. Now, if I move to the middle like that, and I'll lift it up so it's not dragging in the water. That was part of what made them really fast, is there wasn't much drag. All right, there we go, one sail. Now,
Duplicate.
duplicate, perfect. Hit duplicate, I might just use the arrow keys. There we
Two
are,
sails.
2 sails on our waka houroa.
Perfect.
Now it's really sailing nice and fast. Now, we've got our kai and storing and catching, and we've got our sennit rope and solar panels. So I reckon that rounded roof was probably the easiest way to make that little shape. And I'm going to quickly make it a little bit bigger, like that. And I'm just going to hollow it out, the same way we did with the waka. And what I'm going to do is actually duplicate. So there's 2 of them, because I know they're the exact same shape. And then make it slightly smaller, like so. Make it into a hole. And there we go. Now, you remember what happens when I join these 2 together? Yep. So I'll select them.
That one becomes negative space.
There we go. Now we've got a space we can actually live in.
Perfect.
Drag it to the middle, lift it up.
This is looking good.
I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
It's great. Now, I think we've got enough spaces to store our kai, which is great. And we could think about our solar panels and sennit. And what I'm going to show you is just one extra tool to help you create that rope. Now, you'll notice with our shapes, they're really blocky.
Yeah.
And we want rope, which is quite free-flowing. And you can actually use a scribble tool. So if we have a look here, and I drag it on, you have the option to draw a shape and use that as the thing that you want on your boat. So if I decide to just free draw around, let's just say, nice squiggly line, that's some nice rope. Okay. This will give me a shape that I can then manipulate the same way you did with your blocks. So if I hit done, there we go. Kind of doesn't look like rope at the moment. I'll try and make it a little bit skinnier.
So that's a really good idea if you have a shape that you want that's just really out there and different and might be really, really difficult to create with a whole heap. You can just freehand it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And if you were doing little designs, it's probably an easier way than trying to draw them with lots of blocky shapes as well.
That would take a long
Okay.
time to draw that rope.
That's some really big rope. So all I'm going to do is make sure I've got rope on my boat, just in case we get in trouble and we need to tie things together again. Now, if you lift it too high and move your view around, you'll see that it's actually floating. So all I need to do is make sure that it's actually on my boat.
So it's really important to keep changing your view, right? And making sure that it looks good from all angles.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Now we've put our sennit rope, we've got all our kai storing, we've only got some solar panels, and we can just pretend, right? Look, we can use a shape and say that that's our innovative solar panel or our wind turbine. Actually, what shape should we use for our solar panel? What are you thinking?
I think the wedge kind of worked. Let's repurpose the wedge because I feel like a solar panel sits on an angle to the sun, but
Perfect.
then there's something that supports it.
Now you can see the wedge is in there and it's nice and blue. And if we want to make sure it's the right size, we can just reduce. There we go.
Perfect.
I think the person that has this waka houroa in real life would be a real kaitiaki of the ocean.
Absolutely. It's not bad. I think you definitely get somewhere.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Martin. I've really enjoyed that. It was really cool.
Thanks, Jess.
Hey, Sam. Isn't Tinkercad cool? I love how we were able to manipulate all those shapes to make them represent whatever it was we needed.
Yeah, that was really cool. And it was also really interesting to see how you guys were thinking when it came to building your waka houroa, how they could have a positive impact on the environment. It really shows kaitiakitanga for the Moana.
Absolutely. Tinkercad's such a great program. I'm excited to go home and have a go at building my own waka houroa.
And we'd love you guys to have a go as well. So show it to your whānau and then share it to social media using the hashtag below.
That's all from us today. We'll see you again.
Ka kite anō.